Hello, welcome. This is How to Develop Your Characters, and I'm Leslie. If you are new here, we are getting ready for Preptober, getting ready to do our NaNoWriMo together. And if you are new, then you should definitely go back and watch the previous ones. I am not sure that what we're talking about will make total sense if you haven't been following along, and everything builds on everything else, and we're building on the work we did before. But yes, welcome. Hey Deb, how are you doing? How was your week? How was your day? I am coming off a busy weekend and trying to keep my energy together. But I'm actually excited. I've got a lot of energy for this story. And I was reviewing things and I'm like, oh, I'm really excited to write this and to get started. So, yeah, let me know in the comments um, how you're progressing with the story, with your ideas, and if you're having any issues or any breakthroughs or revelations or, whatever. Let me know. But yes, it has been busy. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about developing characters, which is a big topic. It's one of my favorite ones. Um, and because characters work so hand in hand with plot, it's hard to separate it out completely and like thinking about the process and how I go about writing books. But I do dedicate some time to working on the characters and then going back, working on the plot, and then kind of repeating, it's like rinse and repeat. So tonight we will be doing character work, and then in the next video, we'll be going back to the plot and deepening, growing what we did in the last video on which I named part 1 of how to outline your novel, because yes, it's this process that once you know your characters more, you'll be able to figure out what they're doing and figure out the plot better. And then once you know more about what they're doing, it gives you information about the characters and even up until the first draft. So for me, first drafts, I don't know everything. Like I use the first draft, which in this case will be NaNoWriMo, to learn a lot about the characters and the plot. And so things change after that. So what we're doing now is laying the groundwork and the foundation so that we will be able to do the first draft. And then a lot of this kind of happens again, or we go deeper, we build more after we've kind of lived with these characters, lived in the world for a while, and told the story and figured out, oh, okay, this is what I need to know still. I need to figure some things out. I have questions. But yeah, the groundwork helps so much. So I have in the description of the episode or the video some links of some resources. There's a new workbook for character development. We will be using the planner, the spreadsheet that we were using in the last video. Again, if this is the first time you're watching this, I do recommend go to the beginning of the playlist and start, since we're building on everything. And then I wanted to start with names. So I have not named my characters up until this point. Hey, Chelsea, how are you doing? And I finally did that. So I wanted to walk you through how I go about naming characters. And now I'm hot and I'm cold. Okay, so, oh, that's a good question. Deb asks, are you an overwriter or an underwriter? I am definitely an underwriter, which means my first draft is anywhere from 50 to 70% of the length of the final draft, usually more like 50%, but I've been getting a little bit better recently. So if the book ends up being 70,000 words, then my first draft will probably be 50,000 words. If the book, like my longer books, if it's 100,000 words, then maybe my first draft is 60 or 70,000. So I'm not one of those writers that has to cut a lot of things out. My next draft is usually adding all the things that don't make sense, or expanding, because like I said, my first draft, I'm still telling myself the story. I'm still learning the characters. I don't know everything yet, even though I've plotted, even though, until I'm in it and I'm like deep in it and in the characters' minds and their heads and their hearts, I just don't know. And I can't, figuring it out all ahead of time, like making every single decision can sometimes feel very arbitrary until I've lived through it. So yeah, Chelsea says we have the same problem. And there's a lot of writers where you hear more about the people who have to cut. They're like, oh, I've got 200,000 words in my first draft and it needs to be 80,000. It's like, never had that issue. So, yes, I'm like Chelsea, who says, Written Melon says, I have to go back and add details, describing things. I don't like describing things either. I often skim descriptions in books. It's just not, I have a problem visualizing other people's descriptions of things. I see it in my head the way I see it. And so when you're describing it in, whoever is describing it in their books, usually I've already come up with my own way of thinking about it, or I would prefer my own way, or I just can't visualize exactly what everyone else is saying. So I skim description a lot, which means I don't tend to put a lot of description, especially in the early drafts. I try to layer a little bit more in as I'm revising and editing, but it's just not like, I don't like a lot of description. And some readers and authors, are more on the heavier describer end of things. So yeah, we'll talk about naming, and then get into the other character stuff. So for me, names either, I think I've said this before in other videos, but they either come to me immediately when I think of the character and they first come to me, they come with a name, or they don't, and I decide later. So in this story that I'm working on now for NaNoWriMo, they have not come to me, but I did spend a little time thinking about it, and I like to name things and have a meaning behind them. Or it could be a meaning, or it could just be a vibe, it could be energy. But for this story, I'm thinking that since I'm doing this sort of play on good and evil, good versus evil is not a theme that I'm necessarily super interested in. Like I love morally gray, or just shades of gray, not necessarily morally gray, but like shades of gray. And yeah, so I've been thinking about that in terms of this story. And yeah, in terms of the description thing, I'm the same way. Remember that readers need some of that description, even though we might not need it and we might not like it a lot either. Totally true. So in the naming thing, I was thinking, okay, good and evil, I'm having this idea of demons, and I think I'm going to call them demons. I've gone back and forth, and I said that I wouldn't, but my mind tends to complicate everything to the nth degree. And I am trying to not complicate everything. Everyone knows what a demon is, and I will tell you what my version of a demon is in the story. So I think that's going to stay. So we have a story where we have demons and we have warriors who are protecting humanity from the demons. Good versus evil is sort of inherent in that. I came to the idea that I wanted my hero to have a name that meant something like dark or warrior. And then of course I found a name that meant dark warrior. So I will share with you a couple of my naming resources that I like a lot. So here we have thinkbabynames.com. And I like this because it lists the meanings and the origins. So right now the search isn't working. I don't know what they redesigned it recently, but actually if you scroll down on thinkbabynames.com, you will come to origins, themes, and meanings. And this is really cool. So I'm looking for a boy name for my hero character. And you can look for names that are from these various identities, countries, ethnicities. And if you keep scrolling, you'll get to meaning and etymology. So I went to meaning, and there's dark. So like if you click on the word dark, something that happens, because these are warriors, I have this idea about their origin, which is not necessarily light and bright. It's a little bit of a darker origin. You can do by association or by meaning. And so they say that a name may be associated with a word, like raven is associated with dark, but does not mean dark. I chose meaning. And then it'll give you some names. And if you keep scrolling all the way to the bottom, you will get like all of the names. And so you don't have to click on different pages. You can look at, in alphabetical order, all the different names. So I decided for my hero, the name Duncan. Clicked on Duncan. I like the name Duncan. It's kind of a cool name. And it means dark warrior or brown fighter, which I think is hilarious, given that it's Scottish and Gaelic. But I'm writing brown characters. So yeah, it was perfect. And sometimes I like to be right like on the nose with the name. So Duncan fits really, really well. So my heroine's name, since his name means dark, I wanted hers to mean light. So I just went back to origins and meanings, go to girls' names, and go down to light. And then I think I did by meaning. It might have been association. I don't remember. Scrolling all the way down again to the bottom, I basically went through the list of all the names and picked off the ones that I vibed with and that I thought might fit this character. Once again, I don't know her yet until I get into the draft, but you do have to It helps to have a name before you start drafting. And so sometimes I've gone through this and have changed the character name after the first draft. That's actually happened more than once. But I scrolled through and I was just made a list of some of the names that I liked. And I was thinking about Nora, and Nora apparently means light woman of honor. And I was like, that's cool. It's kind of, I don't know if it's old fashioned. It feels old fashioned to me. No disrespect to any Noras out there. It's a very, and I like the name. But then I saw also form of Honora. I was like, ooh, that's kind of cool too. So slightly different meaning. It's honor or honora. But I'm thinking Nora or Honora. And I don't know exactly which one I'm going to go with. But right now we're going to do Nora. And heroine's name. So Duncan and Nora at the moment are the main characters. Hello, Ancient Substance. Hope everyone is cool in writing. Hope you're doing well with your writing. Hi, eTori. Drop a note in the comments as how you're coming with your story, if there's any issues, if you've had any revelations or something like that. I would love to hear it. Question: do you ever choose a name and alternate the spelling? Absolutely, all the time. So in the Bliss Wars series, the first book is Savage City, which is my futuristic paranormal. I wanted all the names to be a little bit different. So I wanted the hero's name is Ryan, but instead of Ryan, it's Ryin. And other characters are kind of named normally, but because that was like a futuristic alternate version of our world, I wanted it to feel a little bit different. So yeah, every once in a while I would change the spelling of a name. And especially in fantasy worlds, like that's a really just easy way to get a fantasy world going, is to just change the spelling of a normal name or a common name into something that's like a little more unusual. Laura asks, do you use nicknames like your name is Nora, but she's called Nora? That could be it too, because I kind of like both. And like, why choose, right? Maybe it is Honora. And when something happens, they use her full name or her full name. Or since this character in this story has a hidden background, like she doesn't know where she comes from. She's really this magical creature and she discovers that. Maybe she believed her name is Nora the whole time and her full name is something Honora, or even longer than that, like a really long name that they've shortened. And when she was brought to the human world, it was shortened. So that's actually something that's a good reason to have a nickname. I mean, you don't need a reason to have a nickname, but in a magical story, it could also do some world building too. Like the whole idea of not knowing a fairy's real name. So yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Ancient Substance is catching up, so that is cool. I know it's a lot. Try not to make them too long, but it's even at an hour or so, there's so much more that could be done, and yeah, but hopefully we get some stuff to get some stuff going. Tony is stuck on character because more concerned with researching. Researching can be fun. It can be a fun distraction also. So be careful of the trap. Hello, Ash. Welcome. Glad to have you here. And Mazel says that my name is Roman inspired. Yeah, I like that. Complicated namings. If you look at different cultures and how different cultures create names and meanings, you have surnames. Do you have surnames? I think in Indonesia or someplace they don't have last names. So that becomes an issue especially when people come to other countries where like your passport requires a last name. Are there, family names your family calls you, other names? Names are so important to world building. There's a whole module in my world building course on naming. And I dive into it. So I'm trying not to do too much with the name here because I don't think this world requires it, but maybe there's also other interesting naming things happening that can tell me more about the world. The other site I use a lot for names is fantasynamegenerators.com, which is just amazing. So if you are not doing anything fantasy, you can still use it. Okay, I guess I have to answer the cookies. Oh, maybe it's my browser, or maybe nothing's working. Okay, it's not working for some reason. Usually it's fine. There's like these drop-down menus, but I don't know what's going on the site. But this site has any kind of name generator that you can think of. I'm going to try it in a different browser and see if it's just my browser is acting up. Yeah, it's that browser for some reason. All right, let me move this browser over. Okay. Oh, that's weird. It won't work on this screen. I'm doing multiple screens and it won't work on that screen for some reason. All right, hold on. I want to show you this because it's so cool. I have to stop sharing and present it on this other screen. Super weird. All right, share. Okay, will this work? Yes. This is what you're supposed to see. So real names, if you are looking for, and a lot of times I pick a culture, especially with my fantasy worlds, like in Earthslinger Chronicles, which is my epic fantasy series. I have these people are the Rhonians. The country is called Rhone. It's an island. It was based on various like South Pacific cultures. So I was choosing different like South Pacific names, so like Hawaiian names, like Fijian names, and other cultures, and changing them a little bit, or sometimes it was just that name. I had decided that another country, Yali, was more like Anglo-Saxon names, and then there was a country that was based on like Scandinavian names. So that's another instance where I would maybe, because I don't want it to necessarily have the weight of our world, I would maybe change the spelling of the name or change it slightly in some way. But this name generator has all the countries that I mean, probably not all the countries in the world, but a great many countries. And also, hold on, fantasy stuff. So all these beings and hellhounds and Nephilim and superheroes. I've also used it. They've got like spell generators. I've got everything. It's great. FantasyNameGenerators.com. I put it in the description. It is fabulous. All right, let me go back to my other screen. Hopefully everything will work. Okay. Let's see. So I've got my character names. All right, the next thing I want to do, sometimes I will cast next and create a cast for like people, like actors, models. I haven't cast these people yet because I don't know them yet. A lot of times my casting happens after the first draft. And so, but this might be a good time if you actually feel like you know what you want someone to look at. You want a picture in your head of what this character looks like. I'm still developing that. And actually, we'll be going through that a little bit tonight in a minute. But yes, a lot of times I will search for actors or models. Sometimes an actor will have portrayed a character that has the same energy as my character. So that'll be my casting choice. And, the casting's always good for aesthetics on Instagram and videos and, um, marketing, things like that. Basing it, if you're going to do character art, I cast everyone in my book, The Monsters We Defy, and then I had an artist, draw the group picture of them all, and I put it on postcards and gave it away for the pre-order. And I had to give the artist like, okay, this person looks like this, and they're based on this actor. And she did a great job bringing those people to life, and because I had cast them. But yeah, at different stages of each book, I do it at different times, and I'm just not feeling like casting right now. I don't have a good picture yet. So maybe after I work on the character some more, it'll come to me. Okay, so I'm going to be using the character development workbook that is linked in the description. And I did not write the link down, but it's there. I'm going to put it on the screen. I think it's alpen.co/characterdev. And it's a Google Doc that you can just copy into your own Google Drive and follow along. So it's got a couple of characters. It's got 2 characters in here. If you need more, I usually only do the main characters in this way. But if you have a larger cast, or if you need to know more about other characters, or if you have more than 2 main characters, then copy and paste away to create more fields. So right now there's two spaces for 2 characters. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my heroine, who is Nora. I come up with a last name at some point, but I'm not going to worry about that just yet. I just got the first name, so I feel like I'm doing pretty good. All right, who's this character? She is my protagonist. What is her role in the story? You can, whatever you feel like putting here. I think protagonist, main character, if there's any shorthand or like shortcut to what this person is in your mind, or if there's a particular inspiration, you might want to put that there. Then we'll do physical traits, so to describe their appearance. And Appearance, that could also be any kind of physical trait. So, appearance, age, gender, race, all that stuff is sort of physical characteristics, I guess I could have called it. So I was thinking about age and what age these characters should be. And that goes back to genre. So I'm writing a romance, a fantasy romance that I want to be sort of this cozy feeling to it. And I was thinking that the characters should be grown, like thoroughly grown, like at least in their 30s. There's a version of this that could be YA, and there's a version of it that is, whatever other ages you want to think about. But obviously, if you're writing YA, you already know the approximate age of your characters. I generally am writing adult fantasy, and a lot of times my characters are in their 20s. But I think for this, I want them a little bit more world weary, the way you get in your 30s sometimes. And I don't think I'm ready yet to write characters in their 40s. I think I have to be at least a decade away to really write a character. So being in my 40s, I'm going to push up to write characters in their 30s who are a little bit world weary, not as much as they will be later on. But I know that there is I could put them a little older and be part of that whole paranormal women's fiction genre that is newer and has been popular, but I don't think I want to go that far. And I don't know, I'm just feeling like they're in their 30s. So I'm going to have her she's going to be a Black woman. I'll just put that as an appearance trait. I feel like she's shorter. I don't know why. And when you start thinking about characters and their physical characteristics, that goes into, or it can go into, how they see themselves, how other people see them. Like, are they very short? Are they like 5 feet tall, or like in their like 4 feet 11 or something like that, where you are noticeably a short person, or are they noticeably tall? And how does that affect their self-esteem, the view of themselves, how they exist in the world? Anything that's sort of on the less usual end of the height or even weight spectrum. Um, and then, yeah, so those are just characteristics that might come. Like, is anything in the story require this character to be a certain height or weight? And if I'm writing, there's a whole genre, I don't know if it's a genre, but curvy, heroines are very big and very popular, no pun intended, are very popular. And a lot of people are writing curvy heroines. So yeah, you go into the physical characteristics with what you want to see, what you want to write, representation, all of that stuff goes into it. I'm thinking that this character is going to be short because she has to be physically like unimposing, and she's going to be around these warriors who are very strong. I think they're all going to be larger because I had this idea that they were like magically engineered or sort of created in some way. So if there is a clear juxtaposition between her physical size and their physical size, and her ability to be menacing, and maybe, the idea that she's in danger and needs to be protected, and then by the end of the story, she shows this inner strength, this power. It's just a conflict. It's a visual conflict on the page when you're using all of your senses to write and to read. So I'm going to put her 5'3", which feels short. I don't know if I go below 5'3", because I have a hard time imagining life. I'm 5'7", and so as writers, we have to imagine all different kinds of characters. But I feel like if I do it too short and I don't have to, then it's a lot of extra work to imagine living in the world at like 5 feet tall. Um, okay, other physical characteristics. Hair comes into it because I'm writing Black characters, and they generally have natural hair because I've had natural hair for a long time. And in a magical world, are they going to have relaxers? I don't know. I do think about these things. I actually wrote this article for, I think, Fantasy Magazine about Black hair and fantasy. These are things that obviously not everyone is going to be concerned with, but I am. So I don't know. I don't want to just give everyone the same hairstyle. I realized that all my characters had cornrows or had braids for a while, and I'm trying to get out of that. So maybe I will punt this decision until later, until I know more about why and like what is she doing with her hair? What does she care about? What is her values? How much time does she have on her hands to be dealing with her hair? blah, blah, blah. So, okay, we spent enough time on this. Personality traits, we can fill in the appearance as you see fit. I will go back and figure out what she looks like. I'm not entirely clear now. Deb says that I think of hair when I read dystopian fiction. Did anyone see what was the recent it was Pedro Pascal with the zombies, The Last of Us. There's an episode with Storm Reed, who's a Black actress, and this is dystopia. They went through all these things about, they needed tickets for food. She had these micro braids. And I was like, where is she getting hair bundles from in this dystopia? I was just taken completely out of The Last of Us with her micro braids. So, yes, hair and fantasy is a big thing. Who was producing the synthetic hair? Like, I'm sorry. Okay. Personality traits. I want her to be bubbly. Yes, super practical. You're right. Ms. Al says, is it super practical since she works as a maid? So, yeah, whatever her hair is has to be practical. I agree. Maybe it's short. Maybe she just shaves her head. I I think that I like that. Let's keep it short and practical. So, a TWA, teeny weeny afro. How you spell that? But go with that. Personality is bubbly. She's like optimistic. I want her to really be an opposite to my grumpy warrior, and we're doing kind of a grumpy sunshine. This is also okay when it comes to personality traits. There's another resource that I absolutely adore, and it is One Stop for Writers. So we'll go to the homepage, onestopforwriters.com. It is a paid resource. It's actually, they're having a sale now if you're interested, 25% off. But I use it. I think it's worth every penny. If you are not aware, I was going to look at the plans and pricing. So a month is $11. I just get the year. It's, I think it's reasonably priced for what it gives you. And what it gives you, among other things, are all of these thesauruses. So you've got character motivations, conflicts. I'm always in emotional wounds. The emotion thesaurus. So these started out as books. You might be familiar with the emotion thesaurus, the positive trait thesaurus, the negative trait thesaurus. All of these, or almost all of them, are actually available in book form. But on this website, you can search them, and there's a lot of other tools. So the question was personality. Yes. So there's negative traits, positive traits. So take a look at positive traits for a second. Since she's my protagonist, she's going to have negative traits, obviously, but we'll start with the positive. It just gives you a long list of possible traits. So if I decided that it's alphabetical, optimistic, I want her to be optimistic. You can see similar traits, causes that can give me information about her backstory, like why is she so optimistic? I mean, nature versus nurture, that whole thing. Associated behaviors. So we can, as we go through and think about her reactions to different stimuli, to different conflicts that are going to come up, how is she going to react in a moment? And this just goes on and on. Associated emotions and positive and negative aspects. So obviously we know being optimistic is generally thought of as being a positive thing, but maybe they refuse to accept reality, and they can be unrealistic and impractical. And gives you some examples, and then ideas for scenes or for situations that you can put in your books. So, and then traits that conflict. So obviously, if we have a character who has these other qualities, they would conflict with Nora's natural optimism. You can keep notes. There's a whole workbook section where you have your own workspace with projects that you're working on, which I actually use a lot too. So they don't have affiliates. I don't make any money off of this, but I do think this is extremely helpful, especially if you have issues. I have issues with character emotion sometimes. A note that I get from my editors a lot is put more emotion on the page. What is this character feeling? So the emotion thesaurus is amazing for that. And I pick an emotion and it gives you some ideas. So back to our traits, let's see. Efficient. It would be helpful if she was efficient. Passionate. I think that would help my character a lot. I want her to be passionate. And maybe I will also give her some negative traits too. and you can kind of choose what feels right for the character. Is she pushy? Um, and sometimes it's hard because these are very negative, but like you don't want your hero or heroine to necessarily be some of these things, but maybe she could be tactless. Sometimes people who are super friendly are tactless, or nervous, oversensitive, paranoid. This would help me in terms of this whole, she feels like she's in this haunted house. Um, stubborn is, yeah, stubborn can be helpful too. I have heroines are often stubborn. My heroines are often stubborn. And actually, I think that in this case, that stubborn might actually be good too, because so I'm going to go back to what was I saying before that? Oh, obsessive. I kind of like obsessive too, but yeah, one of these. She's not grumpy. Gullible. Gullible might be interesting too, because if they are, she's taken into this environment where she's being tricked essentially, and maybe she's trusting, which is a positive quality, but she's also gullible. And part of her arc could be overcoming that. So, do gullible and stubborn conflict at all? I don't know. I do a lot of stubborn characters, so I may or may not want to keep her as this, but I do like it for now because she's going to be persistent and she's not going to give up easily, which is a good quality for a heroine to have. Another thing that, just to show this thesaurus options, another thing I use a lot are character motivations and character wounds, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But it gives you some of the darks are for villains, but most of them are just motivations for, doing what they're doing. And that goes to the inner journey and the inner arc. So this can be a really good resource if you're having trouble figuring out what their character motivation could be, and also what the character wound is. So external goal, I went through in the story development workbook. We brainstormed external goals. So I printed that out, and I'm going to look at the external goals that she has, which once she gets to the house, I'm going to focus on that because that's when the most of the story takes place, once she is hired by these warriors. Figuring out what's happening, figuring out the mystery of this house and these people. And I think that is her goal. So and then here, the internal goal. What are they seeking, lacking, or need to change in their lives? So the inner goal, I mean, the loneliness. So if you go back to the motivation thesaurus, let's see. If her family has passed away and they've left her alone. So something like that could be the inner goal. And Ash asks, is there an option to see how traits can change, such as aloof grow into attentive? I don't think there's an option in this resource specifically for that. Like if we go to, is aloof one of the things on here? There's a search. Okay, withdrawn. Let's just start with withdrawn, which is similar to end of the negative traits. And it gives you causes. It gives you, it does give you over how to overcome it. So that's kind of that. Like it gives you options for how someone would overcome this trait and move from being withdrawn or aloof to being more attentive and like uninhibited, I guess. So like if you can say, okay, how would they go from this? What are some options? Well, maybe you can figure out how the story can make her be accepted for who she is. And then that can be the motivation for the change. So yeah, it does give you some suggestions for that. So the motivations I like to check out. And I'm just trying to remember. Okay, yeah, the internal goal. What are they seeking? What are they lacking? If let's see, family, being acknowledged or appreciated by the family, providing for a family. I'm just like looking at different ways that family could come into play in terms of these motivations. And there's a couple of options. Only isn't listed on here, but yeah, this is just one way to give some options for Nora. What she's lacking, I think we, in my story development workbook, I talked about purpose, and she's looking for purpose. She's looking for connection also. So I'm going to put connection and purpose. And then what deeply felt core belief prevents her from reaching her internal goal? What is stopping her from feeling connection and purpose? And this goes to the idea of this wounding event or this lie. So core belief, it can also be called a knot or a lie, depending on the character development system that you are following. There's a lot of things that overlap. But usually there's this thing that is wrong, this internal problem that needs to be solved. And so if the issue is, solving this will allow her to feel connected and have a purpose in her life, there's a reason why she might be, even if she's positive and bubbly and she's friendly, there's still a wall between her and other people. There still has to be some kind of problem. And I think that's the one that she has. And that can come from feeling abandoned, so this abandonment by the fact that she is an orphan, and she was caring for her grandfather. He was her main family person and family member. And when he passed away, she felt abandoned. So abandonment, now the core belief, it's more than just, okay, I feel abandoned, which is where we can get into Enneagrams. So Enneagrams is a personality typing system that I like to use to create characters. There's all kinds of different ways that you can figure out personalities and like archetypes of characters. You can use Myers-Briggs, but I like to use Enneagrams. And there's lots of different resources online about using Enneagrams. This is a cheat sheet that I downloaded. The original website is not up anymore, but it's linked here. And I always try to make sure to give credit where things come from. And Cam Weiland, who I've talked about many times, this is generated from posts on her blog. So you can use this link to go back to the original posts and see more details about this. But there are 9 Enneagrams and 9 personality types. There are tests you can take online if you are unfamiliar with them to see what type you are. I'm a 5. I'm an investigator. And the first couple books, my heroines were both 5s also. And now I specifically try to write characters all along the spectrum of personality types. So I'm not always writing the same characters because my default is a 5 because I understand them very well. So this helps in terms of figuring out the lie. So I don't know if Cam Weiland did this originally herself or where exactly the origination of this chart and all of these, the way that it's laid out is, but you can get information on each of these types. The name should give you a little bit of a clue. So let's say for type 5, the ideal is omniscience. So investigator, you want to know things, you're always researching. It's like, it doesn't necessarily align to introvert, extrovert, but kind of. So the fear is being useless or incapable. The desire is competency. That goes along with the ideal of omniscience. Like you want to know everything, you want to be very competent. There's a vice. They all have vices or flaws, which is avarice, which can be thought of as sort of greed for time alone to do your thinking and your researching and your competency gathering. Strength is perceptive and self-reliant. Weakness is emotionally detached and cynical. And the lie. So this is the column that we are most concerned with at this point in terms of the character development workbook. I'm not competent to handle the demands of life. So I don't think that she is a 5. I think that she might be a 2, which is the helper, because if her issue is that she has abandonment issues, then she feels like maybe she's not lovable. And so that's why people leave her. Now, obviously, death is different, but it's not always rational. And you could feel abandoned by the death of loved ones very easily. So if she's a 2, the helper, her ideal is freedom. And maybe if she felt locked in this job of, locked in a life of drudgery, the fear is that she is unworthy, her desires for love, her vice is vainglory. And I have to look again, and I have there's a resource about these flaws and vices, but vainglory is just a weird word. I have to look it up again and see what it means. The strength is kind and generous, and her weakness is being intrusive and needy. So right now, she's feeling like a 2 to me. I don't think that she's necessarily, judgmental and hyper perfectionistic. That might be the hero. Maybe the reformer. And you can kind of look through these and definitely check out the original article if you're not familiar with Enneagrams. Because, yeah, I'm going to go with the 2. So if her lie is I am not lovable, let's go back here. That's essentially what this is. So I'm just going to put abandonment and then I am not lovable. And this is just like a starting place. You can tweak this and make it conform to your own characters and how you think about things, but this is a really good place to start. And then 3 events from her past that led to this belief was, basically abandonment by family. She feels she's not lovable. Maybe she has been, she had an ex-boyfriend who abandoned her too, like, in a really painful way, like she was ghosted by a long-term partner who just disappeared and never came back. So, and then the third event that could lead her to believe that she's not lovable is friends. Like for some reason, she can't keep friends around. Like, her close friends leave her behind or something like that. I have to position her so that she really is in a emotional hole at the beginning. And she's an optimist. She's doing her best to maintain her positivity, but it's still hard. And then 10 possible events that could lead them to change this core belief. So again, I think listing 10 things is super helpful just to open your mind to all the possibilities. The first things you think of are usually just the easiest and the most trite. So when you dig deeper, when you force yourself to make a list of 10, you're just getting at the better stuff, and you are forcing yourself to be more creative and, do things and come up with things that readers haven't seen a million times before. There's familiarity and good things that come with making readers feel comfortable with what you're doing, but you also want to be unique and different. So I will not do that at this point since we are getting a little late and I want to go make sure I get to some other stuff. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will move on to the ARC tab. So back in the story planner spreadsheet from the last week, the last video that we did when we were starting to outline, once I have this, and sometimes these things are overlapping, and I like to write things over and over again in different ways, worded slightly differently to make sure that I feel good about them and that they're right. And sometimes I'm tweaking and changing things as they go on. Hey JK, welcome. You use One Stop for Writers too. Awesome. Yeah, it's such a good tool. So I'm going to put the names that I decided in here for my heroine. Now that I know her name is Nora, and my hero is Duncan. All right. So this is external. Let's stick with internal for now, at least with her. So gut level need is connection and motivation. We have kind of that stuff. So obstacles, I had brainstormed that somehow her powers make it so that, these people have left her, at least the friend and the ex-boyfriend. And then her wound, a traumatic past experience. One Stop, again, has this wound thesaurus that I use so much because, especially when you write a lot of books, and not that I've written a ton, but at this point, I'm at like 10 to 12. And I don't want to keep going to the same well for my character wounds. So the emotional wound thesaurus has been like a godsend. I love this thing. So maybe I'm just going to really quickly search under abandon. Let's see if they're okay. A parent's abandonment or rejection, and then there's also abandonment over an unexpected pregnancy, which is not. So a parent's abandonment or rejection is really fits right into our character, our dear Nora. She was left as a child. She was left with her grandfather, but she was still did not have her birth parents, and she doesn't know why. And so, maybe abandoned, and maybe it's not her biological grandfather. Maybe he adopted her. Maybe he was someone who is took care of her and loved her, but was not actually related to her. This goes into the needs, and so you can also brainstorm this, but like I said, I just like to have a starting point for my ideas about these character stuff. So the lie that we got from the Enneagram is that I'm not worthy of love. We can build on that. And, does she think that she's defective and that's why people keep leaving her? That's why her parents abandoned her. She doesn't really choose to be alone. So these are just options. She could believe a lie. If you let someone in, they'll hurt you. People always leave when times get tough. That kind of resonates with me. Um, if they achieve enough, they'll be worthy of love. That could be. But I feel like maybe she believes she's defective in some way, and that's why no one sticks around, and that's why she has such a hard time keeping friends and family. And so that's a pretty strong wound. So I'm going to go over here but then the why. So I think the why is that her parents, abandoned and rejected her, right? So parents abandoned her as a baby, leaving her with the man she knew as her grandfather. The lie that this created is that I'm unlovable and defective. Um, the fear that results from the wound and drives her behavior. So, this gives us a lot of information too. It gives us I think there's a thing about possible fears. Did I skip over that? Oh yeah, the character may fear. Normal relationships, inadvertently driving others away. They're defective, definitely doing that. Never being loved, letting someone in. So this is sort of resonating with me that internally she's afraid she's going to drive others away. Of course, that means that if this is actually her fear, then that has to appear to happen. Like the character's greatest fear, in order to make the story as heart-wrenching as possible, kind of has to happen. So that gives me an idea for some scenes and for the plot stuff also. So she's afraid of driving others away. And because she thinks that she's broken, she thinks that she's defective, that kind of thing. So love, what does she love? What does she hate? What does she dream about? I don't know. Does she have a secret? Maybe, I'm not sure yet. And then the lesson. What does she need to learn to become the person that can have this need fulfilled, to have this connection? The Wind Thesaurus gives us some possible, responses. These are the negative responses. And triggers steps towards healing. So some things that could happen is that she becomes incredibly loyal to people who don't abandon her. They're loved consistently. And I think in this story, because she becomes part of this tight-knit family and she's able to save them and they save her, that cements, like, she knows they're not going anywhere. Something like that. Is it just me, or do your characters ever change once the story begins? Oh my goodness. Yes, absolutely. That's why I don't do all of those like really detailed character profiles. Even One Stop for Writer has a wonderful character builder profile, but I don't do that until after the first draft because my characters constantly change once the story begins. So as much work as I'm doing right now, like by chapter 10, they'll probably be veering off a little bit. And I feel like if I don't do the work, I can't do the writing, but I don't expect it to stay the same. So you are not alone if that happens to you. You're in good company. I don't know exactly how to phrase that, but by becoming part of a family, of a found family, who is loyal to one another, who are loyal to one another, she will realize that she's lovable. Something like that. So I feel like I have a good start. I added these love, hate, dream, secret, and these are really things that I learn after the first draft once I'm a little more confident about the character. But I feel like I have a good handle on that. We can go back into this motivation, character motivation thesaurus to figure out, okay, why does she need to prove this thing? Or if back here, she wants to figure out the mystery of this house. This is actually the external goal. So I would probably go back and change this because kicking ass at her new job. Yeah, I have that. Discover where everyone's hiding, which is basically the same thing. It's kind of the first blush at the desire. And her motivation for discovering what everyone is hiding is that it's triggering her that she senses these people aren't telling her everything. And because she's a person who's been abandoned, that's very triggering. So she senses there's a secret she's being left out of. And she hates that. One of her biggest pet peeves. And maybe there is some other wounding event in her childhood, that she was teased or whatever, she was the butt of the joke, and that's just a thing that is going to be like, "Oh, no. I need to find out what's going on because I'm in danger." It's like a fight or flight response. So, yeah, we can use that, and then how does this character change? That's similar to sort of this last question here about the lesson they have to learn. They change by putting herself out there, or there's the external changes where she's going to discover that she is a magical being, but the internal change is kind of trusting, and trusting herself and trusting others. That was a weird autocorrect. And over the course of the story, the events of the story that I'm telling have to bring this character to this place. So this is why I do the character and then go back and do the plot, so that I can design a plot that brings the character to this place where she is trusting herself and others, where she is part of this found family, and we've proven the loyalty. They're loyal to her, and she's loyal to them. She's also in love. Never forget this is a romance. I do the romance after the regular plot stuff. That's just how I prefer to do it. But yeah, so that is the basics of this. Yeah. Any other questions? I think this is a good place to be. So obviously I would go back and do that with Duncan too and figure out his whole deal. And if I need to do it, I might want to do at least part of this for the antagonist. If I'm going to have an on-page, very present antagonist, is really important to know why they're doing the things they're doing, to give them a full range. They might not have an arc, they might have a negative arc, or they might just stay the same. But even if they don't change, they're going to have desires and motivations. They're going to have wounds and lies, and they just might not get to this lesson part where they overcome their lie. Duncan's going to have a secret. He's going to have dreams. Loves, like, hates. I can actually fill this in that she hates people when people are talking about her, or when people are gossiping about her, or being the butt of the joke, something like that. So does this make sense? Is anyone lost or confused? The next step that we will do in the next video is to go back to the plot and get into the save the cat of it all. So in the last video, the first outlining video, I took you through the 7-point plot structure. I would like to expand upon that now that we have more character information, and see what additional plotting ideas have come out of that. Another thing that I do is start just brainstorming scene ideas, and talk more about that in the next outlining session. Hopefully this is clear. Cool. Ash says the breakdown's been helpful. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, I think that is it for this evening. Too many screens. So, yeah, I will see you in the next video. If you're coming live, it'll be this Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, just like always. And hopefully you will, in the time, get your other characters together, your main characters, or your main character, however many you have, and maybe give some thought to your antagonist and come ready to dive back into your outline and flesh it out a bit more so that we can hopefully get some kind of map for the writing process that helps get through NaNoWriMo. Like NaNoWriMo works the best, in my opinion, in my experience, when you know what you're doing every day and you don't want to sit down and have to write 1,667 words and not know at all what's going to happen. So yes, we have homework. Finish your character development workbook with your characters, and I will see you next time. Thanks a lot. Take care.